That's a Nishiura Shakes the World. That's a pretty good one.
And that resolved.
Yeah, I'll Boreal Grazer into Cultivate. What a start.
Backup Grazer, that's a little whatever, but you got to answer the Nissa.
Right. Next turn, what if something like a Hydroid Krasis comes down next turn? What a brutal beating that would be.
The front half of an Uro for Ichikawa. Not doing much against this Nissa, which will continue to go to work for Nishiura. And I'm looking at a handful of spells. We don't have the hand cam. Let's take a look at deck list. How many Thought Distortions are we playing this week? Oh, I don't see any in the main deck.
There are 3 in the sideboard. This is game 1 because this is time shifted. So not a factor here. Ryosuke is going to be looking for something like Hydroid Krasis, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Euro Titan of Nature's Wrath here to capitalize. Casualties of War maybe later. Doesn't really need it right now. It would just be a 6-mana Stone Rain. But really pressing the mana advantage, and you're seeing just how powerful Nishiura Shakes the World is in the standard format. It's so good.
And as it keeps going to work, 2 lands attack Ichikawa down to 12. We'll see how he can battle back. You see an attempt at a Wilderness Reclamation. That just works, and there is an explosion in the hand. So 1 mana floating, and it's going to be a cycling of Shark Typhoon. Let's get a 4/4 Shark. That blocks 3/3 lands pretty well.
Yeah, next turn he can use it, all of his mana to do, I think, exactly lethal to the 8 loyalty Nishiura Shakes the World if he plays the land from hand. Because he does generate 12 and he can expansion explosion for 8, but that's going to leave a bunch of land still coming in here for Ryosuke. I don't know if he has a way to break through the Shark Typhoon. Casualties of War would be a knockout blow right now, though.
That would have been huge. Ooh, how about this, though? And Ugin the Spirit Dragon for Nishiura, and that only takes 0 to take care of the Shark. It's going to be for 4, though. Let's take the Reclamation, too. Leave my Nissa, leave my Ugin, attack you to 6.
Yeah, those are Boreal Grazers doing nothing. A -4 from the Ugin, knocking off that Reclamation and the Shark token. Oh no, my Boreal Grazers!
Yeah, so there were no Thought Distortions in the main deck, but there were 3 Ugins, and one of those cleaned up that game really nicely.
For sure. Now, one cool thing about this the Sultai ramp deck is that it did gain Cultivate, and one really, really big play in Pioneer for a long while was our Boreal Grazer into Nissa's Pilgrimage. They didn't even have access to Cultivate. They had to play Nissa's Pilgrimage and a bunch of basic forests. But watching the Boreal Grazer into Cultivate in Standard, into Nishiura Shakes the World, that's the dream curve, man. 1, 3, 5, let's go.
Get that Nissa out. Like you mentioned, Cultivate has some advantage over Nissa's Pilgrimage. This deck just gets to Uro sometimes. That's pretty okay. Right. See kind of the standard fare for Team Reclamation here, Ichikawa. Putting all those red spells in the sideboard. The Growth Spiral Mirrors are all about the Simic side of things.
Yeah, generally speaking, in this matchup, you're like removal spells out. Utility counter spells in. You want most of your copies of Aether Gust, but you don't want to do all of them usually because Wilderness Reclamation and Euro are generally the most valid targets. Occasionally you get to snipe something like a Nightpack Ambusher, but it looks like maybe Yuki Ichikawa is going to go for a little more of a beatdown plan with some Elder Gargaroth, that new mythic rare out of M21.
Yeah, this is really interesting here, and I want to pick your brain about this, because you see Gargaroth right now flirting with the main deck, and you see Commence the Endgame, which is largely 4 Mystical Dispute Mirrors in the sideboard. Is this just all because of Thought Distortion?
Yeah, I think that Yuki Ichikawa, seeing the deck list, knows that he has to hit the battlefield running. He has to be basically as aggressive as possible. His hand is always in jeopardy, so ramping into something like a Nightpack Ambusher, Elder Gargaroth early enough could put Ryosuke in a really precarious position and make it so those Thought Distortions don't do nearly as much.
See a shock for a Grazer from Nishiura. No lands.
Oh, no.
And here's a Growth Spiral for Ichikawa.
Yeah, missing a land drop for Ryusuke. That might be the game on turn 2, missing that third land drop. You have to imagine that there's like a Cultivate or something hanging out. Maybe a Negate because that Growth Spiral wasn't cast main phase. And maybe Ichikawa actually goes for a Negate on this Growth Spiral in order to prevent the hitting of land drops, but chooses not to.
You mentioned that Grazer into 3-drop is huge, but live by the sloth, die by the sloth. Nishiura does find land number 3. Is it enough now, though?
You know, maybe. Given enough counter spells in hand, especially if they're like Ether Gust related, could be enough. But this Gargaroth looks like it's going to come down here. We'll see if Ryusuke has the answer.
Growth Spiral in response. Ooh, that does hit a land. That could be huge. Gargaroth is on the table, though.
Wow.
I'm looking for Ether Gusts in our Sultai deck, and I'm not finding them.
You know what, buddy? You're right. There's not any.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying you'd really like to have one against the Gargaroth.
You are. That is a fact.
And the medium Gargs is rumbling across.
Yeah, and this card is not really designed for this style of matchup, but the card Thought Distortion does strange things to people. It forces you to really make some really awkward decisions as far as sideboarding is concerned, because your deck construction is built in such a way where you can't really handle a card like Thought Distortion in your previous iteration. Oh, wow.
Casualties of War. Yeah, that would be really nice if it worked, but here is Ether Gust, and that Gargaroth that drew one extra card already for Ichikawa. With this Gust going off, it's going to be another one, and Nishiura is down to 10. Couple explosions in the grip for Ichikawa as well.
Yeah, and to generate a little more velocity, Yuki Ichikawa is going to go ahead and cycle Shark Typhoon. It's only for 2, so Alberto Grazer can step in front of it and take no damage, but that is a nice pickup here for Ichikawa. Found Wondrous Reclamation, and that combined with Expansion Explosion should end the game this turn.
Mystical Dispute picked up as well. Just all heat. There's Reclamation, and there's a concession. We are going to game number 3.
Yeah, Elder Gargaroth doing a real good Thragtusk impression there, just gaining a lot of incremental advantage. Being a giant body for 5 mana, it's such a powerful mythic rare. It's a bit of a brute force, I gotta admit. I'm not the hugest fan of the build of the card in general, as far as just having so much text on a 5 mana giant fatty with no drawback, but you have to understand just how powerful it is by just watching it completely dominate a game, and closes it so quickly at that.
I will say, in the context of boarding in a card like Elder Gargaroth against Thought Distortion, I think it was really cool to see that strategy be successful.
Oh, absolutely. This is something that a lot of high-level players figure out quickly, where you understand that the card Thought Distortion obliterates you. And so you have to figure out a way to generate enough pressure before they cast Thought Distortion. The only way to do that with your configuration, because of the nature that you've built it, right, in order to be better against the Teferi Time Raveler decks, against the Mirror, against the other aggro decks, is you figured out a configuration that allows you to go slightly under the Thought Distortion, so that the meat and potatoes of your deck actually ends up being creatures that are unaffected by it, and you're able to put the pressure onto the battlefield early because of Growth Spiral and Euro. And so you're able to actually get under the Thought Distortion, which is not something you can usually say for a deck that's as kind of slow as Team-a-Wreck.
The Gargaroth last second made their way out. I do kind of like this, because we do see a couple Heartless Acts in Nishiura's sideboard, maybe a little bit of a juke there. And also, on the draw, you're pretty well curving right into Casualties of War.
Oh, yeah. The curving into Casualties of War is a pretty big deal. You got to feel for Ryusuke, because I felt like that missed land drop on turn 2 was the whole game. And he was basically one turn late casting the Casualties of War, which ended up making him one turn late of resolving it through an Ether Gust, and that ended up basically letting Gargaroth attack multiple times, which was just lights out.
See a negate on a growth spiral. That's actually kind of a pain for Ichikawa because the hand's all lands, even after cycling the Triome, just a negate and an expansion explosion for spells. Growth spiral off the top, though. That was a good replacement for the one that was countered.
Oh, for sure. I don't think people counter growth spiral enough.
But, that's probably true.
But both players here, pretty heads-up play from either side, and negate on the growth spiral early for Ryusuke. He understands that this matchup's all about early mana advantage.
The land number 5 for Nishiura. We're going to see an end-step growth spiral from Ichikawa. Finds Ether Gust. The hand is shaping up now.
Now it'll be interesting to see if he wants to shock and cycle the Triome or just play the Triome so that he hits land drops. Looks like he's going to go for the former, since feeling like he's maybe a little flooded.
Yeah, also probably interested in finding the namesake card, or at least something to play a little bit more on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Shocks for land number 6. We see a growth spiral from Nishiura. Ichikawa has negate, Ether Gust, and expansion explosion. Gonna go with Gust on growth spiral.
Interesting. I would imagine that would have been a nice one to save for something like Nisu Shakes the World. Growth Spiral getting countered on like turn 2, pretty big deal. Growth Spiral getting countered on like turn 4, 5, not so much of a big deal.
Well, here's probably why. Yeah,
yes,
you want to get ahead of this thought distortion. So you got some value by the Gust, not getting value from the rest of the hand. That's going to go to the exile.
Yeah, that's a very heads-up play from Yuki Ichikawa. It's one that I was very puzzled over, and then the moment that Ryusuke untapped with 6 mana, I was like, we found the culprit.
But distortion into Nissa, this is a nightmare for Ichikawa.
Yeah, and this is probably why Ryusuke is 3-0 and looks like he's about to be 4-0, because this is really bad looking.
There is a Castle Vantress for Ichikawa to try to dig out of this, but he'll need to find something really powerful really quick. Shark Typhoon.
That's a heater. That can block the land that comes in next turn, and maybe even threaten to kill the Nissa. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe it's going to be one short of being able to attack the Nissa to death, but still a fine card to draw nonetheless.
So Shark Typhoon was the draw. Looks like 3 cards in hand for Nishiura currently. Active Nissa going. You see some mana being floated here. That's a lot of mana.
Hey, it's your boy, Hydra Crisis over here. That's so much mana. It's so big.
Wake Up a Forest. X equals 12 on Hydrate Crisis. Little draw 6.
Yeah, looks like we're going to do a smaller than max Shark Typhoon, digging for exactly Mystical Dispute. Swing and a miss.
Finds commence the end game, and well, the end game is commenced, but not because of that card.
Yeah, but you are not the one dictating these terms, sir.
It's not unlike the actual War of the Spark storyline. Yeah.
Was the jellyfish like a really big part of the War of the Spark storyline?
No, Nicol Bolas commenced the end game, but didn't win the war. Yeah, Hydrate Crisis really pivotal in the lore as well, as you alluded to there. Another thought distortion.
That's brutal. Not a whole lot he can do, though.
Cast Growth Spiral, and then get rid of the rest of the hand. Here is Ugin. Nice token blockers. Ryosuke Nishiura is going to advance to 4.